Deconverted man here. Theists. Take a step back and look at it. Stories are told from one generation till the next, passed on, father to son, mother to daughter, so on and so forth. Some people decide keeping certain stories is a good idea. Some people decide getting rid of other stories is a good idea. And eventually these stories get codified into a written format, and that too is passed on and changed slowly through time. This is every religion. The why question is answered by the gods or the spirits or the winds or the whatevers. Rules are made up of how to live life. A reward and punishment system. Good deeds will be rewarded, bad will be punished. And the universe is explained with a just so story. But of course, not every religion follows that pattern, but broadly speaking, that is what they tend to do. And also, religion dies out when no one believes in it anymore. And some other religion takes its place. And of course, that happens a lot by force. Killing your enemies, well, that's a good way to get rid of their ideas, isn't it? And Romans simply just took the gods of the Greeks and changed their names and stories. And then the Greek gods are effectively dead. The monotheistic religions are not much different and look as man-made as every other religion and belief system does. But one might not feel good about that because one wants their religion to happen to be the true one. So the other ones, those can be the fake ones. But mine, that's the real one. Of course, the other gods are made up. Then people are just believing in the wrong stuff. Mine's the one that's real and true. But I press to take a step back and look at it. Look at the whole world as time plays out. Billions of years that the planet exists. The small chemicals connect and reconnect, and at some point, life starts to form and begins to become more complex over time. Countless lives are born and die over and over, and at some point, some life becomes more complex. Billions of years sweep by as we watch the life do this until one species emerges and starts to walk around and use tools. More time passes, those creatures keep on living, dying, reproducing. Creatures that know what it is to suffer. And the smarter ones wonder why they're here. But those answers don't really matter because food has to be secured. Although they do have time to paint the prey they go after, they feel that that gives them power over the prey. And of course, people still die in the hunts, and of course, the hunts sometimes fail, but the painting of those animals makes them feel better. Now let's push our fast forward button here and watch as time rushed by. The creatures now slowly become more like the humans that we would know. They form societies, fighting each other, loving each other, killing each other, giving birth, dying. Some invent religion, others shun it. Others believe stories, some believe facts, some don't care and focus on the now. All sorts of things going on in this vast world. And you ask, where's God? That's a good question. Which God, of course, is the question. But, well, see that tribe? Yeah, they just made a spirit up. Oh, that wasn't your God, so screw them. You want your version of God. Now, I'm gonna pick on Christians because it's common to be Christian here in America, so let's pick that one. And we got to fast forward a few more million years till eventually there's this guy, Abraham. And he decides that a war god named Yahweh, who was already a ancient Levantite deity, is his god. And his stories about other gods are around in that time, but his people, the Jewish people, he tells them that that's their god. And he uses the stories that already exist and modifies them and tells them story. Of course, probably some other people were involved in that, but nonetheless, the religion of Judaism is perhaps codified in that moment to be more monotheistic than it had been in the past. Gives them a cultural identity, but these stories are passed on from one to the other and change over time. And we have to watch for a few more thousand years. And then finally we get to a guy who starts going around saying that the world's going to end soon, but follow him. And you go, oh, who's that guy? And that's Joshua. Who? Oh, right. You know him as Jesus. Then we can watch a few years pass, and a number of people begin to believe the story that Joshua makes up. His followers follow his every word. He runs afoul of the Romans and does something to piss them off and gets executed. That's it. We watch as his followers cry about it. But then at least one of them says, he saw Jesus just now. The others agree. Stories about seeing Jesus spread out and change over time. Those stories are passed word of mouth until at last someone writes it down. Then that scroll is copied, and what must be the dumbest idea of all time, they destroy the original when they make these copies. And then that new version is passed around until it's either destroyed, lost, or whatever. And then a bunch of people decide what is kept in the story, what's not kept in the story, and it's all codified into one big giant story. Now maybe you're saying, oh no, wait, but Jesus did miracles in the Bible. But that's not what really happened if we actually looked at real history, of course. None of the anyone did actual miracles. That never happened. That's the story part of your particular religion. We look at that religion over there. You're fine when no miracles manifest in that religion over there. You're fine when there's no Zeus. You're fine when there's no, this, then, you don't care what the Hindus are doing because they're not your religion. You care only when it's your religion. You say, okay, well, I don't like that. I want to see my God involved in history. All right. You really want your version of God to exist? Okay, so we get to do it all again. Let's rewind and start again. Watching it all from start. This time, God watches along. He watches as life comes into existence, as species live and die and evolve and suffer, etc., until humans come around and millions of years pass, and then finally he whispers in Abraham's ear, choose Yahweh. That's the real God. That's me. Then he does some magic for him and a few other Jewish people, and there you go. And later on, much later on, he tells a young woman she's going to give birth to his son. Then the son goes around telling people about the God that Abraham talked about, but also kind of suggesting that he might be God, but not really. It's kind of vague. He gets killed after doing a number of magic tricks for people, but he comes back to life and his followers are really happy. But then he goes buggers off into heaven because he did that. And we got to ask this question. Why did God focus on that tiny part of the world? What about the rest of the world over there in Asia? What about them? What about the Hindus over there? What about the Egyptians right next door? What about the people in Americas? What about all the other humans? They don't get to know about the real God? God doesn't tell them about itself? Doesn't whisper in their ears, hey, my name is really Yahweh? The Egyptians, no, they get a different God. Ra must have spoken to them. So maybe there's multiple gods all speaking into people's ears all the time. And that God is always super specific to that region. It's them that get the message. It's them that are the special people. The rest of the world, who cares? Really? God did that? Because that seems a lot like all the other human religions. God is acting the same way as every other human religion that you're fine with being completely human made. Your God is acting exactly like those gods by focusing on one tiny speck of the world in one tiny time of the world. Anybody that lived in that time wouldn't have known anything about Yahweh or Jesus. You're an Egyptian, probably wouldn't hear anything about him. You could live and die never knowing anything about the real God. So take a step back. Look at the vast wealth of human history. I've seen the apologetics out there. Oh, well, the history of the Bible, the history of my book is so great, and there's so many things that support it, and there's ways you can argue that the miracles makes intuitive sense. And now, of course, some people just say it's pure faith. And it is. It is faith. It's a faith that anyone can have about anything, any story that's out there. And the story of different gods has been told and retold in many different ways, in many different times, in many different cultures, and it's always specific to that time and that place. And we have new religions that are created and they're born and die, some really quickly, some stick around. You have cults, some stay around, some burn out. And of course, there's this joke about that the difference between a cult and religion is the cult's where the leader is still alive, and the religion is when the leader dies, but it stays around. The beliefs keep going. Maybe that's what the followers of Jesus were a cult, really, until the leader died, and then they became a religion. But the scariest thing is you don't even need Jesus to make any of that work, because somebody just needs to tell a story about Jesus, and somebody else has to believe that story. You don't even need any followers of Jesus to get that ball rolling. And nor do you need Yahweh or an Abraham. You just need people to believe. You don't need any of the Hindu gods. You just need people to believe in them. In fact, the weird thing about any god that's out there is it needs people to believe in it. Why is that? Well, maybe because if you don't believe in it, it disappears, never to be heard from again. Mayans, we know they had a god or gods or spirits or something that we don't even know what they called them. Those are lost to history for the most part. We don't know some of their ideas, but others, it's gone. They're never coming back. So why would God be so limited to a specific location on Earth, to a specific time, and rely purely on humans for its delivery service when that methodology is the same methodology that every other religion uses? Why would the real God not be distinguishable from all the made up gods? Perhaps the only conclusion that if you take a step back that you could really draw from that is that all the religions are equally made up. And you might say, okay, fine, but there could still be a God. Maybe, but it doesn't appear to have told any human about itself. And if it has, then it's done so in an identical way to every other religion out there. And that's not very smart. So you either have a dumb God or a silent God. But for some people, at least having a God, that's something. And they need that for whatever reason. So maybe you took a step back and you looked at this and you said, okay, I can see your point, but I still believe in my God. Okay. Then it is a faith, and say it's a faith. Don't try to tell people that there's evidence for it. Don't try to tell people that there's a proof for it. Maybe don't even tell people about it unless they ask what you believe in and why I or anyone else would need to know what you believe in. Who knows? But it is a belief. That's all. It's a faith. For me, I don't need faith. I just need fact. And maybe if you take a step back, you might find that you don't need faith. You instead can use facts.